Good day, everyone. We are to begin this event, which is called Documentation and Analysis of International Crimes for Future Justice. And this is a review of a project which received the support of the EU. The key applicant is the Kharkiv human rights group that I represent as the director of the organization. The other co-applicants are the Ukrainian Helsinki League for Human Rights, represented by Ruslan Topolevskyi on my right, and the Anti-Discrimination Center Memorial from Brussels. The representatives of ADC Memorial will be joining us for the second block. And now we are on the first session. I would also like to say that the Center for Civil Liberties is an associated partner in this project. The project is titled Documenting and Analyzing the International Crimes Committed by the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation since the 24th of February 2022, Support for Victims, and Public Awareness Raising. I would like to give the floor for the welcoming address to Asir Saltinyan, who leads the Department for European Integration, Governance, and Rule of Law at the EU Delegation to Ukraine. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Distinguished guests, representatives of the civil society, colleagues, partners, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting us to be together with you today. It is a privilege to join today at the launch of this important initiative and to recognize the extraordinary work carried out by the Tribunal for Putin, Coalition and its member organizations. More than 4 years after Russia's full-scale invasion and more than a decade since the beginning of Russian aggression against Ukraine, the Ukrainian people continue to endure immense suffering. Civilians have borne the brunt of this war. Homes, schools, hospitals, places of worship, and critical infrastructure have been attacked. Families have been separated, thousands have been killed, injured, detained, tortured, or displaced. As it happened last night again in Kyiv, for example, with 11 more people at least killed this night and around additional 50 people or around 50 more injured tonight. No military objective can ever justify the violations of international humanitarian law or international human rights law. The principles protecting civilians during armed conflict are not optional. They are binding obligations under international law. The European Union has consistently condemned Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the grave violations and abuses committed in its course. We remain deeply concerned by reports of unlawful killings, torture, conflict-related sexual violence, enforced disappearances, attacks against civilian infrastructure, the deportation and forced transfer of children, and other acts that may constitute war crimes, crimes against humanity, or other serious violations of international law. In this context, the work of Ukrainian civil society organizations has been indispensable. The Tribunal for Putin initiative stands as a remarkable example of determination, professionalism, and resilience. Since its establishment in March 2022, the coalition has brought together organizations from across Ukraine to document international crimes, preserve evidence, support victims, and contribute to accountability efforts at both the national and international levels. The scale of this work is extraordinary, and it will continue with this new phase of the project, which we are opening today officially. The documentation of tens of thousands of incidents, the collection and verification of evidence, the support provided to victims and survivors, and the cooperation with investigative and judicial mechanisms all contribute to a common goal: ensuring that justice is not delayed, denied, or forgotten at this stake. And this takes time. Beyond documenting crimes, this project gives voice to those who have suffered. It preserves testimonies that might otherwise be lost. It helps transform individual experiences of trauma into evidence that can support investigations, prosecutions, truth-seeking, and reparations. This work matters not only for Ukraine. Accountability is essential for the international rules-based order, and we still believe in the international rules-based order. When serious crimes go unpunished, the risk of future violations increases. When perpetrators are held accountable, it strengthens respect for international law and helps deter future atrocities. Justice is therefore not only about addressing the past, it is also about protecting the future. The European Union remains firmly committed to supporting efforts to ensure full accountability for international crimes committed in Ukraine. We support the work of Ukrainian institutions, international accountability mechanisms, the International Criminal Court, the United Nations, and civil society actors who contribute to evidence collections, victim support, and the pursuit of justice. We also recognize that accountability must be victim-centered. Survivors and affected communities must remain at the heart of all efforts. Their rights to truth, justice, reparations, and warranties of non-repetition must guide our collective actions. The activities envisioned under this project, documentation, field missions, legal assistance, psychological support, advocacy, public awareness, and engagement with national and international institutions, represent a comprehensive response to the challenges posed by ongoing conflict and continuing violations. Sorry, I need to get water. I mean, as many of us tonight, I didn't sleep that well. And this morning, early in the morning, I had to count if all my team was okay, because most of them, they are based in Vienna. So, sorry, in Vienna, no, in Kyiv. So I need to drink water from time to time. As the work continues, so too must our commitment. Evidence must continue to be collected and preserved. Victims must continue to receive support. International attention must not fade. And accountability efforts must remain steadfast until justice is achieved. Thank you very much for your job. Indeed, allow me to express the European Union's appreciation to all those involved in this initiative. The lawyers, researchers, psychologists, human rights defenders, volunteers, local authorities, and above all, the victims and survivors who have found the courage to share their experiences. Your work demonstrates that even in the darkest situations or circumstances, the pursuit of truth and justice endures. Before working in Ukraine, I had the chance or the honor to work in other conflict-related situations, like, for example, in the Western Balkans, in Colombia, or even in the Middle East. And something that it really matters when you think about transitional justice, truth-seeking, etc., is really to be centered on the work of, let's say, on the victims. I mean, this to having a real victim-centered approach. If you think about the Western Balkans, and sometimes we have some international organizations that come with experiences in the Western Balkans that they want to transfer to their experience to Ukraine. and we think about war crimes, usually what comes to our mind are the names of the perpetrators. So we all know about Slobodan Milosevic. We all know who was General Mladic, maybe General Gotovina as well, Oric and others, Haradinaj, etc. But we don't know that much about victims. I sincerely hope that this is not going to be the case in Ukraine. And projects like the one that you are implementing these days really matters in this regard. In the future, and it will be a bright and positive future for sure for Ukraine. I really hope that actions like yours will really help to ensure that in the future we think about Ukraine and the conflict about Ukraine based on victims. That whenever we, in 10 years' time, if we mention the conflict in Ukraine, we will be in the international level or at the international level thinking about the victims and not that much about the perpetrators. We don't need to know which is the general X, Y, and Z that bombed us. We need to know which are the victims, how they suffer, why they suffer, and which are their rights for them to don't be forgotten, and to ensure that in the future these situations are not repeated. Let me finish here. The European Union stands with you, stands with your people, with Ukraine, and with all of you that are working to uphold human dignity, human rights, and international law. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraine.
Glory to our heroes. Thank you for the most inspiring, welcoming address. Next, I have the floor, and I would like to begin with saying my words of gratitude to the EU delegation in Ukraine, which for the second time since the beginning of the full-scale aggression has granted support to our organization, has recognized the efforts of our organization aimed at documenting the core international crimes committed by Russians, investigating these crimes and supporting the victims. The second project, which was launched on the 1st October last year, and we will be recapping the deliverables of our project reached within the 9 months of the project, is an extension of the first project, which was launched in 2022 and spanned 2024. The key objective of our organization and what we do in the context of the full-scale aggression unleashed by the Russian Federation is giving full support to the war victims and supporting as many victims as we can with a prime focus on the civilians. This is our core objective that we started off with, and this has remained our prime objective throughout. To reach the objective, we have brought together an unprecedented approach, which is holistic and comprehensive, and it comprises the following elements. Firstly, collecting information about the crimes committed. Secondly, documenting the crimes, entering them into the database and analyzing them. Thirdly, assisting the law enforcement institutions in formal investigation and collecting evidence for the prosecution of the perpetrators. Thirdly, providing legal, psychological, financial, humanitarian, social, and medical support to the victims of these crimes. And the last component is informing the stakeholders in Ukraine and beyond about the crimes. I would like to draw your attention to the screen, which depicts the way we collate the data in the database. We enter the following data: location of the site where the episode was committed, and that could be the geodata or the address of the site of the crime, the date of the event, the type, and we have a multiple choice list, the object of the attack, preliminary charges under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, the personal data of the victim, of the perpetrators are entered into the database, and the evidence such as media files, photo, video, text, whatever is available. The information is collated by 25 CSOs who are the co-authors of the Tribunal for Putin initiative, and the initiative was launched on the 24th of March 2022, and we've been collecting the evidence from the very start of the full-scale aggression, and the initiative is nationwide. Right now, you can see the number of incidents of crimes entered into the database: 111,250. In addition to this database, the Kharkiv Human Rights Group has a dedicated database, and we use it to preserve the data on the cases where we are representing the interests of the victims in criminal cases where we are supporting the law enforcement. As you can see, the second database has around 19,400 episodes. And now I would like to mention the sources of information. Open data, the hotline of the Kharkiv Human Rights Group, which opened in 2024, and testimony of the victims and survivors. Clearly, the direct interaction is preferable as it helps collect the information firsthand and then submit complaints to the law enforcement institutions. So it's very important to identify the victims of the crime and receive their testimony. So that the testimony can be entered into the database and the victims would receive the support they need. We have continuous outreach trips of the monitoring groups into the deoccupied territories, reaching the towns and cities where the victims are concentrated. We make arrangements with the local governments. We arrive as a team of 2 lawyers and a psychologist, and we interview the victims, and the psychologist is there to provide first psychological aid. We have we have made 212 trips. 173 of them were with the support of a psychologist, and the psychologist offered crisis therapy to those who needed it. We covered 854 victims, and the interventions lasted 694 hours. In addition to crisis therapy, I would like to mention the regular psychological aid we offer, and these are the numbers. In the 9 months, we've given such continuous psychological aid to 792 individuals, and this lasted 3,906 hours of the interventions of our psychologists working from Lviv, Kharkiv, Kyiv, and Mykolaiv. Since the full-scale aggression, our organization has represented victims in 8,932 criminal cases. You can see the numbers on the screen. At that, we follow the priorities defined by the Office of the Prosecutor General, and we deal with the following types of cases. Civilians killed and wounded, victims of illegal apprehension, those missing, and often they are the victims of abductions, to put it in simple terms. Normally, these offenses are qualified as forced disappearances. And there are those who've been detained or abducted and are illegally detained in Russian facilities where they are tortured and subjected to sexualized violence. This is the data over the years since the beginning of the war until the 30th of June this year. And you can see the same data only delivered in the second phase of the project over the last 9 months. So in total, you can see the numbers and those delivered in the second phase of the project. We are working very closely with the investigative units of the National Police of Ukraine and the Security Service of Ukraine as we investigate the crimes with the procedural oversight of the Office of the Prosecutor General. And this cooperation is critical as no law enforcement system of the world could stand up and cope with the influx of cases. So our law enforcement institutions need all the help they can get. And when our lawyers represent the victims, they can also play a role in helping investigate. They can arrange meetings with the victims, with the witnesses. They can trace the witnesses. They help interview the witnesses. They help with identification of the alleged perpetrators, identification of the bodies of the fallen. Our lawyers have been able to find 9 perpetrators from amongst the Russian prisoners of war who were then tried and convicted. As of now, there are 27 cases pending trial. 1 case is pending appeal. In addition to the national accountability effort, we are building the evidence and reaching out to the international accountability mechanisms, particularly as for torture and CRSV. We've reached out to the UN Committee for Human Rights, and as for those with enforced disappearances, we are dealing with a working group of the UN for forced and involuntary disappearances. And again, you can see the numbers on the screen. We have filed 310 applications to the UN Committee for Human Rights and 2,381 applications to the Working Group of the UN on Forced Disappearances. In the 9 months of the current project, we have submitted 52 individual applications to the committee and 1,366 applications to the working group. Certain applications have transcended to the communication stage, and there are 17 such cases with the committee, including 8 within the new project and 28 cases with the working group on involuntary disappearances. We've had 5 such communications within this phase. And now I would like to discuss the awareness raising component. As I've been saying, we have had 7 submissions during the first project, and these are the covers of these submissions. And we have already made 1 more submission under the new project. Of the overall number of submissions, in 2 of them we had qualified the conduct of the Russians in Mariupol and abduction of Ukrainian children as genocide. There are enforced disappearances, abductions, and summary executions that are qualified as crimes against humanity. The attacks on the civilian facilities and civilian people as a number of war crimes, and torture of the civilians in the places of detention on the temporarily occupied territories. We are doing this in order to raise the profile and attract the attention of the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC to the evidence we've collected, so that the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC could initiate the investigation of these crimes. And our efforts have not been in vain. And to the best of my knowledge, the ICC is currently considering the submissions. The children for the abduction, the case for the abduction of the Ukrainian children has been initiated earlier, but now they are considering the extrajudicial summary killings, the forced abductions, and the enforced disappearances. And I hope they can start an investigation for these crimes.
However, we were supposed to give the information to the experts, and we did it, but it's too little. This information needs to be disseminated beyond the territory of Ukraine. That's why on the website of our Kharkiv Human Rights Group, we've got 3 versions, Ukrainian, Russian, and English, of the information, and we update the information on a daily basis. And it was back in September 2022 that we launched a separate website which is dedicated to war crimes. We did this in the first months of the war, and since September 22, it became fully functioning. Now we go on working with this website, and It is a very special website because it has got 7 language versions: Ukrainian, English, French, German, Italian, Russian. So all the materials are published in all those languages. And besides analytical materials, news, and videos, different reports and statements are also published on that website in 7 languages, which you can see on this slide. You can also get the link to be able to and go to that website. And besides that, we launched a project called The Voices of the War, and it was 331 video interviews. They were all published on the website. 233 out of this figure are interviews in English, and these are the interviews with the witnesses and victims, and in general, the people who have a lot to share about the war. These are all very interesting interlocutors who can provide interesting information: volunteers, military men, journalists, psychologists, musicians, artists, and so on and so forth. The most interesting interviews are also translated into 9 more languages. So the project, The Voices of the War, enables us to hear their stories of people in 9 languages. I should also speak about our anti-torture work, because that was in our agreement with the hosts. I know that I'm pressed for time, too little time left, so I will try to do this very quickly. So first of all, I need to say that if we speak about civilians, according to different sources, 90% of all civilians who were apprehended in the occupied territories were subject to torture, and with the servicemen, this percentage is 95%. But I can tell you that I personally communicated a lot with those who were subject to torture and then were released from captivity, and I didn't see a single person who didn't go through the process of torturing or cruel treatment. And I would say that these are awful tortures. Let's say very many people had all their teeth out of their mouths, and beating is something that takes place on a daily basis in their detention facilities in Russia, and also in the detention facilities in the occupied territories. It should be also said that everybody is being tortured. These are men, women, elderly people, children. Unfortunately, that is the case. And since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, their initiative tribunal for Putin documented the information about 1,139 incidents of torturing, and there were 115 people who were tortured to death. This figure includes 25 children who were also tortured. That's something that we have documented and something that we are currently investigated into. Here you can also see the map with the number of incidents of torturing in different regions. So in Kharkiv region, its number was the largest, 615, then in Kyiv region, 144. So you can see that the incidents of torturing took place everywhere where there was occupation. So you can see Donetsk region 96, then you can see Chernihiv, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, Luhansk regions, Sumy region. Why do they torture our people, our citizens? Here you can actually see the likely goal of detention, apprehension, and further torturing. They can do it to get information from the people who are tortured. They want to also force them into confession about the crimes that they have not committed. They want to force them to show their loyalty to the Russian Federation in public. They want to force them into cooperation with the occupational authorities, the military men, or just like torturing people. They like abuse of power. And in the last slide, you can see different methods of torturing. And here I have not indicated all of them. It's beating primarily, almost with everyone who was tortured. That was electroshocking devices. It was electric current. Also, the wire was connected to the nose, to the ears, and other parts of the body. That could also be torturing in the format of cutting the eyes, the ears, and the fingers of the victims. And there were also attempts made to cut a part of the body. There could also be torturing in the form of simulated execution when they force you to dig a pit or they shoot above your head. And most of the interviewees spoke about particular cruelty of the torturing. Like the person who was tortured with electric current said that the uh, body, it was really harsh because even the foam could was produced by the mouse, and that like the whole body was twisted. If the goal of the torturing was achieved, some of the prisoners were released from the torture houses. We know that there were plenty of such facilities. In Kharkiv region alone, we found 33 of them, and we could be talking about this for hours. And normally, the people were released if the enemy understood that these people were, so to say, already broken and they could no longer bring any harm to the Russian Federation. We interviewed those people. We are helping all of them because they are all in need of psychological help, medical help. Unfortunately, for civilians, the state doesn't have any special programs to provide this assistance. That's why we are doing it on our own. We are trying to do our best to really help these people and to bridge this gap. So that's the end of my speech. Thanks a lot. Sorry for taking too much of your time. Thank you for attention. And let me give the floor to Ruslan Topolevskyi from the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union, and he will tell us more about working with the databases, and he will tell us more about documenting. Yes, welcome, dear colleagues. Hello, I'm Ruslan Topolevskyi. I'm the lawyer of the Lviv part of the Ukrainian Human Rights Helsinki Union. And today I will briefly outline the issues that we have faced while doing the documentation. As you probably know, and Yevhen has already mentioned, law enforcement agencies do not manage to record all the violations of the international law and all the crimes that are committed by the occupation army, by the aggressor. That's why the process of documenting established by NGOs was launched back at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Well, in fact, we documented also what was happening during the ITO, the anti-terrorist operation, but the full-scale invasion led us to an absolutely different approach to documenting. And besides the state law enforcement agencies, and besides NGOs dealing with documentation of all those events. We can also mention the register of damages. I think you've heard about it. Let's say now the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union helps people to submit their applications to the Register of Damages to fill it with information. But in fact, all those approaches just enable us to record a part and to document a part of those crimes. And we remember that if the crime is not recorded, it's invisible and seemingly it's not there. So international organizations get acquainted with the crimes that have been documented. That's why we're doing it. And today we're going to speak about the effort taken by the documenters from the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union and Kharkiv Human Rights Group. I will just speak about the period from the 1st of October 2025 up to the 30th of June 2026. So 17 documenting agents have been following the events in the government-controlled territory of Ukraine. And what else would I like to draw your attention to? You can get more detailed information on the website, t4pua.org, which is all about the documentation of war crimes in Ukraine. And this is the web page of the Tribunal for Putin initiative. And down on the website, there is the section Live Statistics. So there you can actually get familiarized on a daily basis with the information because it's really changing dynamically. We've got regularly updated information there, and you can have a look there and to see in what detention facilities Ukrainian staying in the occupied territories and in the territory with the Russian Federation. So the period I mentioned is from October the 1st, 2025. We have documented 21,509 incidents, and we can actually try to already do a summary. Let me draw your attention to the fact that in the breakdown of different components, the figures may be a little bit different because of the specificity of this database. Overall, over this period, we have seen that more than 1,200 people have died, 45 children among them. But we are recording the information based on open data. And it's much more difficult to find the relatives of the or personal information of the affected people. And it's not always the case that relatives are ready to share this information because sometimes the people affected don't want to provide this information. They wouldn't do it because they think that this leads to re-traumatizing because they have to recall about those events once again. So almost 8,000 wounded people have been recorded, and 545 of them are children. Also, we have recorded 2 cases of sexual violence. Well, in fact, there are about 15 of them, but only 2 of them belong to the ones who have kind of agreed to provide the information. Asir has mentioned the qualification of ICC, and Johan has mentioned it. We also do pre-qualification of those actions from the point of view of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and here we can also see that almost 970 cases are the cases of destruction or damaging of historical buildings, religious buildings, art and culture facilities. And in the Rome Statute, we have a separate article which presupposes special protection of those facilities. We can also see more than 2,800 attacks on civilian facilities. 22 cases were also related to children. More than 12,000 cases of destruction or damaging of property. More than 100 cases of torturing and cruel and inhuman treatment of civilians and servicemen. Let me draw your attention to the fact that some of those international crimes are invisible because a lot of people are not ready to speak about that. Let's have a look at the next slide, and you can see that almost everything that refers to forced disappearance is there. Yevhen has shared some information about the project that deals with forced disappearance. So, out of more than 200 cases, almost all the people have been identified, and we are working with them. But I think that this is exactly the situation where we are not really recording all the cases, all the incidents of forced disappearance. Let's have a look at another breakdown. I will take just some more of your time, and I will focus on the on some specific cases. More than 15,800 incidents have been recorded with civilians, out of which 410 are for children, and 282 were the ones that happened to the servicemen. Over this period of time, we've also been recording air attacks, missile drone attacks, artillery, then mortar. Then the use of drones against not only servicemen but civilians. And let me also draw your attention to such a category as a purposeful murder of civilians. So we have recorded over this period 61 cases, and out of this, one refers to a child. Our statistic reflects only a small share of the crimes that have taken place, and only in cooperation with mass media drawing attention to this problem, and only in cooperation with international organizations will we be able to record those international crimes and draw the attention of the public to them both internationally and nationally. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Ruslan. So we are supposed to be joined by Oleksandra Romantsova. She's supposed to stay online with us. She is already there. So Sasha, over to you. Well, thank you. I'm very happy to see you. And in my speech, I would like to draw your attention to one more very important component of this project, which is a kind of a continuation of international cooperation, and the component, I mean, is very important for the overall work. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. My colleagues, could you please tell me whether you can hear me? Now we can hear you. Well, sorry for some poor connection. So I would like to draw your attention to a very important aspect, which is the importance of documentation and international cooperation. And there are three statements I would like to mention. First of all, we do have to realize that Ukrainian citizens living in the reality and in the background of war crimes. We actually documenting the crimes being inside them, and all the documenting agents actually are affected by the process of documentation. And this is a very much unique situation. Therefore, we may speak that this is the most documented war or armed conflict in the history of mankind. We are documenting all the things that have taken place during the Russian aggression. At the same time, there is a need for us not just to bring to account the people, but to get this cooling effect now, as through political decisions and through international decisions, because our partners have to focus and to rely on the cases that have been where the crimes have been recorded. That's why it's very much important to do this documentation part to ensure consideration and trial in ICC or in the Court of Justice. And it's also important to provide regular reports and messages for the UN, for the Council of Europe, for the OSCE. And that's exactly what is happening within this project, because we collect the information and we submit this information not for legal purposes only, but for the international political arena, because this is something on what the political decisions will rely. I mean, the decisions regarding the response to the actions of the Russian Federation or decisions on assistance provision to Ukraine. For us, this is daily reality, which has already become something normal for us. But for the whole world, this is a unique situation, the context of which is not always clear and is not always logical. That's why we need to provide regular updates and regular clarifications for this new hybrid format of the armed conflict, and the decisions that that we take and the solutions that we find here in Ukraine will be of importance for the whole world, because the documents, the crimes that we document are new crimes, like missing in action of civilians, abduction of citizens, keeping them in detention facilities in the Russian Federation. This is something that has already been described by the Geneva Conventions. Uh, has not yet been described by the Geneva Conventions, but we record thousands of such cases. Or let's take the crime of propaganda. Kharkiv Human Rights Group has been working with the propaganda crime, because this is the crime which is not yet described in the international criminal law. So we need to document this information to do some advocacy work, and then we need to understand that this is not just a solution for Ukraine, but this is a solution that would work for the benefit of the new international society that wants to find new responses to new types of crimes. That's why it's so much important to establish international cooperation and to ensure cooperation between different bodies of the EU and of the world to investigate into crimes and to find new ways out. So we are really grateful to the EU for ongoing support, and thank you for understanding that the things that are happening in Ukraine now is something Ukraine needs to document, but this documentation is very much important for the future of the process, whole process on the international arena. Thank you. Thank you, Sasha. We still have some more time for the Q&A session. So I'm addressing the journalist. I'm Rostislav Lohinets. Good afternoon. So we can understand it from the report that a lot of work has been done. 11,250 crimes have been documented. But could you show us the chain within this process? How does it take place, and how many of those crimes really help to bring the perpetrator to account? Because documenting is one thing, but investigating is a different thing. So do you have any statistical data to find out how effective this work is? Are you really helping the state, or are you competing with the state, or are you just taking your own track to popularize something that we call with the term informing both the residents and the international community. Okay, thank you for the question. Let me give you the answer. Well, first of all, definitely we do not compete with the state. We cooperate with the state, and I've already mentioned this in my speech, since the tasks and the objectives are the same with us and with the state. But the main problem about having so few criminal proceedings launched and getting to courts is that the investigative bodies cannot really identify the personal data of the perpetrators. And without this, they cannot really write an indictment, and they cannot send it to a court, the information to court. The moment they get clear about the personal data of perpetrators, the moment the investigative authorities find out this information, they give the materials to court, and more than 500 sentences have already been made by courts. In courts, we have got now 27 cases, so we're trying to work with those criminal proceedings now. Besides that, let me mention that when we see such a situation, we address the UN Human Rights Committee, and this creates an additional pressure on the Russian Federation, because we submit statements on torture and sexual violence, and as I already mentioned, we have already got well-established communication with the committee, and we hope that the decisions are coming, the sentences are coming. And the decisions of the UN Human Rights Committee will definitely be against Russia. They will acknowledge what we have stated, and this will create an additional tool for exerting pressure on the Russian Federation. Besides that, I'd like to say that after that, the special tribunal on Russian aggression against Ukraine will start functioning based on the agreement between Ukraine and the Council of Europe. This agreement has already been signed, and this tribunal is already in the making, and it will start functioning soon. The number of criminal proceedings will be on the rise, that's for sure. And finally, let me mention the following. All those international crimes do not have any limitation of action. They can be considered and tried in 10 years and 20 years. And I guess that after Ukraine gets victory in this war, and I have no doubt about the fact that Ukraine will win over Russia, the process will speed up. I think that it's also good to mention a principle with a philosophical basis. Justice doesn't have any limitation of action either. So that's the end to my answer. Are there any questions from the room, from the audience?
I would like to follow up. I'm Miroslava Kvasnitsa. I'm the coordinator of the rescue shelter in Lviv, and I would like to underscore the importance of outreach. We are a government supported institution with the support of UNFPA. This is the UN Foundation for the people, and we provide psychological support to the people afflicted by the war, those who've sustained sexual violence resulting from the international conflict. So to document the cases and as the reason why a gap exists between the cases documented and the cases formally initiated, is that you have to really provide full support to the victims before they can testify. The psychologists need to support the victims. We start with the crisis consultations, then we stabilize these people, then we bring in the lawyers, and only then we can consider testifying through a legal process. We try to advocate with the people and say these crimes have no statute of limitation. The people who've been subjected to conflict-related sexual violence are eligible for reparations. Thank you for your work in documenting these crimes. Please reach out to us. We stand prepared to support you because it's a dedication for years. Speaking of people, the servicemen who be subjected to torture and beatings, it's one thing, but it is hard to for people to recognize the civilians too can be tortured, beaten, and subjected to conflict-related sexual violence. I can just resonate with what you are saying. We give full psychological support to the victims of violence. We had 115 criminal cases to do with the conflict-related sexual violence, and the Office of the Prosecutor General registered 401 cases. So we have more than a quarter of the overall numbers of serious V cases. And not all the victims have been ready to share their personal data. We are still supporting them. We're investigating their cases, but this information is still kept safe. As we, as some of you registered, there was a question about this topic, and we together have provided an answer to the question. And the workshop that will be held tomorrow and the day after tomorrow by the Anti-Discrimination Center Memorial will be on interviewing children victims, especially the children who've been subjected to sexual violence. More questions, please. Good day, Daraya, lawyer, human rights advocate. Thank you for your work. My question is, what countries that had accountability drives for atrocity crimes could be most relevant for Ukraine, and perhaps why? There are two ways to answer your question. On the one hand, what's happening in Ukraine is unprecedented. If it's genocide, it is a genocide of a national group. And national group being people of the same citizenship. And that is something that hasn't been considered by an international tribunal. Equally, there are no precedents similar to the abduction of the Ukrainian children. The investigation initiated by Karim Khan in 2024 is the first ever case in the history of the international criminal law. So we are setting precedents in many ways, but also we cannot and should not ignore the wealth of experience built by the international tribunals, such as the Tribunal for Rwanda, Tribunal for Yugoslavia, and we can build on the knowledge. Equally, international crimes were committed in other countries, and we need to look into their experience, and that is Yugoslavia. I would say that working with an institute against torture called Dignity, placed in Copenhagen, have been our partners for a number of years on a number of projects, and we've learned a great deal from them because the experience has been gathered, and if we couldn't build from that experience, we would have to reinvent the wheels. And that pertains to documenting, to interviewing children, interviewing women, interviewing victims of sexual violence. There are certain standards that have already been shaped. There's the Istanbul Protocol on documenting torture. And without doubt, when we are documenting the cases, we can draw on the Istanbul Protocol, and our psychologists rely on it heavily when providing the psychologist findings of the mental state of health of the victim of torture, and it is a procedural document that is admitted into the evidence and presented in court. And already these psychologist findings are used and considered at trials. So there are still novel things we need to grasp, but we can also build on a lot of experience. We have a question in the Zoom. Can we hear them out now? Their hands up. We are 7 minutes into the next session. Let's take a brief question then. There were more questions filed during the registration. I have them before me, and I've answered one of them. We are ready for your question. Over to you. Hello. I can keep my question up until later. It's a reply or reflection more than a question. I didn't know that another session is coming up. So I will not take up your time then. I will keep my reply up until later. Fine, thank you. Any other urgent questions from Zoom? I'm Olga, a lawyer and an advocate, and I have a reflection and an add-on that CISOs like yourself are intrinsic in documenting the crimes committed by the aggressor, the human rights violations, certainly, but also crimes against the environment. Our organization and others are documenting the crimes against the environment committed by the aggressor, and the capacity of the governmental institution, the law enforcement institutions are limited and not enough to document the damages and collect the information, and the CSOs have a vital role to play. We're no competition, but we are support for the governmental and law enforcement institution that can facilitate the accountability efforts on the international level and claim the damage inflicted. We are now helping file applications in the register of damages, and there's the compensation, the claims commission that is being made operationalized, so we can We are working with full dedication. Of course, we are pressed for resources, but we do what we can. We try to record the damages inflicted to the environment, and we're working with the public institutions, helping them document the damage inflicted on the environment, as documentation efforts have been scarce and ineffective. There are ways to document the damage by the outreach group, but also remotely. It's a massive effort, and thank you for organizing the discussion. Thank you for doing the work that you do. We stand prepared to support the initiatives to bring the aggressor to account for the damage inflicted and the damage to the environment in particular. Thank you for your response. I can mention that we are mentioned in the damages register as the organization ready to support with filing claims, and our lawyers are offering legal advice. You've been asking, there was a question about handling cases of universal jurisdiction. Our organization in particular isn't pursuing the universal jurisdiction cases, but I can just say that Jan Petrovsky was convicted in Finland because our organization presented the information about the crimes he had committed to the Finnish prosecution. And as it's commonly known, he was sentenced to life in Finland. So we seem to have answered all the questions we had received. So now it makes sense to transition to the second section of our event. And I would like to ask the experts of the Anti-Discrimination Center Memorial from Brussels to take the floor. They are our true and steadfast partners in the project implemented with the support of the EU. So the floor is given to Stefania Kolaeva, but she will take the floor after Olga Abramenko. Dear colleagues, dear guests, esteemed journalists, the high representatives of the EU, on behalf of the Anti-Discrimination Center Memorial from Brussels, I would like to thank you for coming in here. I would like to thank you for your interest in our work. In this joint project, the ADC Memorial is responsible for the rights of children. And now I would like to demonstrate a short video prepared for the June Day, the International Day for the Protection of Children, and the International Day for the Protection of the Victim Children. Please demonstrate the video. The war crimes of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, the war violence. As of 25th of May 2026, the full-scale war in Ukraine have taken the life of 706 children. 527 have been injured. This is the official data found in the state portal of the Children of War. No children in Ukraine can be safe. Close to the line of hostilities, the children suffer from the hostilities in remote area, attacks on the civilian facilities, infrastructure. The threat of using the children as hostages during the hostilities. In September 25, the speaker for the Third Army Corps of the Army of Ukraine had reported that Russians internet had abducted an orphaned girl. Her parents were killed, and she was used as a live shield. And the Ukrainian army was told that she could be found in any building. The sexual violence, exploitation of children on the occupied territories is committed by the Russian troops. In September 25, it became known about the rape and the sexual exploitation of teenage children by the Russian servicemen in Zaporizhia villages, which are now temporarily controlled by the Russian Federation. The criminal persecution of children accused of resisting the occupational government. The Ukrainian TJs charged with opposition are kept and inhumanly treated. There are at least facts of the detention of minors in Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kharkiv, and Kherson regions. 2 teenagers accused of committing a terrorist attack were killed. Abduction of children with their legal custodians, the transfer of the children, full legal adoption of the Ukrainian children has been documented. As they were abducted into the Russian Federation, their personal data, identified data, was changed. The children, which were then successfully returned to Ukraine, were detained in Russia, indoctrinated, severing their Ukrainian identity and language. And thousands of children remain in this predicament. Militarization of children. Ukrainian children in occupation or taken to Russia are forced to join militarized youth organizations such as Young Army and others. Children are not given a choice, but are made to play military games, handle weapons, and manufacture drones. Many children are made cadets, etc. The children are brought up and educated to wage war against their own country. The children become a potential military resource, inscription resource for the Russian army. So the children face the risk of fighting their own country, Ukraine. The publication is prepared by the ADC Memorial Brussels and Kharkiv Human Rights Rights with the support of the EU. The illustration is produced by the artists who survived occupation in the Ukrainian territory. This video was made for the International Day of Children and the International Day of Children victimized by the aggression. There's nothing seemingly new about this video. Those working with children, those documenting the war crimes, those who don't ignore what's happening, have heard the information. We have daily news about the victims, about the crimes committed by the Russian army and the occupational government on the temporarily occupied territories, about from the children who were brought back to Ukraine through governmental or CSO efforts, but put together, we see a massive and tragic picture of the crime committed daily against children, against the very future of Ukraine. The problems mentioned in the video, the killing of children during hostilities, all kinds of violence, deportation, indoctrination, disruption of their education, disruption of their Ukrainian identity, being enlisted and conscripted to fight their own country. But also we should add a fact of documenting children who ended up in Russia or occupied territories. And there's a vast number of such children. The children had Russian citizenship imposed on them. They were forced to accept Russian documents. They are, in fact, hostages of the Russian regime, but they need to be remembered. We need to enhance the mechanism of restoring the Ukrainian ID documents to bring the children back to Ukraine and fully reintegrate them. Also, I would like to discuss the special support that the vulnerable groups of children require, the children from the Roma minority in Ukraine. Ukrainian children more than ever need support. The Ukrainian governmental and CIS organizations have done much to document and to raise awareness of the international communities and to prepare the legal groundings of these cases for tribunals. We see this as our mission so that the war crimes against the Ukrainian children do not go unpunished and the perpetrators are held to account. With the support of the EU, we can continue the work, and we are grateful to the EU for the support, both for the financial support and the policies against the war criminals. Thank you for your attention. Olga, thank you. I would like to give the floor to Stefania Kolayeva next.
Tomorrow, some colleagues who are going to attend it tomorrow already came to Lviv from very many different cities of Ukraine. And the issue that we're going to discuss is not exactly new for some of us. We've been working on the problem of children who became victims of the war of Russian aggression since 2014, and especially since 2015, we already started to organize meetings, roundtables, and discussions with the Ukrainian colleagues about focusing on the problem of return. We understood that many children ended up already then in Russia or Belarus and had difficulties to be returned. Actually, it didn't exist any mechanism, effective mechanism of return. The only one was out of date, very bad work in Chisinau Convention, kind of agreement between countries which was seen in a very post-Soviet way and which couldn't be used already then effectively, especially in a situation when there were actions of war. But then we understood and we followed and we saw very many different situations, how actually children end up in Russia. Now, since 2022, a lot of attention has been given to children who were abducted, children who were taken against the will of their legal representatives, sometimes even actual parents, sometimes responsible authorities. But in 2014-15 and later, and also in this already stage of full-time aggression, we also know lots of children ended up there with their families. They were taken by some adults, not always even parents, sometimes parents, and mostly they were not asked if they want to go to Russia and to stay in Russia. We have more and more growing number since so many years passed of young people who were taken as children and who grew up in difficult situation, looking for opportunity to change it. That's also one of the issues, how to help such young people or even still teenagers. Talking about crimes against children, we've just seen this video that is kind of summarizing the problem of very different crimes, not again also only abduction, but we have a big challenge, how to talk to children, and not only to children, sometimes to people who are involved in the case. These are responsible adults or other people, how to present this information. We heard in the previous presentations of the speakers, and I completely agree, that we have to name every victim, that we have to know them, but we cannot name every child. We have to be very delicate with information about children. Sometimes we have to change the name or not mention any name, and even sometimes we have to change completely the circumstances, like the author of these pictures. Very young person, as a child, almost all her childhood, because it's east of Ukraine, suffering from the war, but we cannot give the name of the author and we cannot even say where exactly she's from, because there are other children in her family still there. Big challenge is how to stay ethical, but also to realize and to find out the truth about the crimes committed against children. And there are very different approaches that we are going to discuss tomorrow and the after tomorrow. Maybe you've heard of Murad Codex. It's a codex that declares that all victims, especially victims of sexualized violence, should be completely protected, also from indelicate questions, from extra questions, and we should kind of not try to discover what they don't want to speak about. That's one approach. Another approach that is specially developed for children by state investigators, how to interview children victims of crimes, actually of any crimes, any violence, war-related or not war-related. They try not to traumatize children, to speak to them only once, also to follow special conditions. Indeed, psychologists have their own rules and their own codexes, how you talk to children victims of violence. But these are not only categories. There are also sociologists who already work on ethical approach to doing sociological research about children victims of war crimes. There are also human rights defenders like us. And actually, there is no holistic approach. It is not yet united into one method, and maybe will not be, but we can discuss if it's possible and what can we take from each other. And these questions we are very much willing to discuss with real experts whom we invited to the seminar, some working with children as sociologists, some documenting crimes as human rights defenders or lawyers, some working in state institutions, investigation institutions, be it prosecutor's office or police. Some are working as teachers at school, because any actual adult can come across trauma that child has. And as we know from those teachers who work close to occupied territories or to deoccupied by Ukraine territories, most of the children have some traumas, and teachers indeed are also people who have to think of the way to react, and maybe sometimes they need immediately to contact psychologists, and maybe they need to contact investigators. Also something that becomes very actual, as it also discussed by previous speakers, that impossible to do human rights research without keeping at least contact with some investigators, because sometimes you come for kind of human rights violation issue, but you discover real crime, and that has to be immediately included into state investigation process. That's kind of very brief idea of what we want to discuss on the seminar next days. And if possible, I would like to invite some of the present experts to share their expectation and their idea. May I ask Tetiana Bondar, Tetiana Semikop, and who is there from psychologist? Ms. Vovk? Yeah. Can you come to us and join us here? Yeah, that's a option.
So good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm happy to be here with you. And I'm also happy because I'm a social scientist. I'm Tatiana Bondar. And for quite a period of time, we've been dealing with surveys of children, parents, including the ones who were affected by the war. And so far, this initiative of ADC Memorial Brussels is a very important initiative for everyone, for the whole country, and for Kharkiv Human Rights Group, for all those present here, because really, there is a lot of work to be done. And here we have a lot of experts at the table who definitely know that we will need a lot of, so to say, free hands to do the whole work. As far as surveys of children are concerned, we need to be very much thoughtful in order to know how this should be done in order not to do harm to children. Definitely within our research, we have developed some ethical principles we comply with while conducting surveys of children, children having parents, children having official custodians and trustees or caregivers, or the ones who are under the patronage of the state or specific institutions. So at the moment, we are going to have a lot of different target groups of children. Those who have seen the consequences of the war, those who have lost their relatives, those who have lost their houses, those who have been affected by violence, violent actions, those who were abducted, and so on and so forth. So this is just a short list of different categories of children with which we will have to work, applying a tailored approach, the approach that would help us to get as much information as possible to use this information for some legal issues and not to do harm to the child, because they experienced a lot. We had a survey in 2023, and the results of the survey are available on our website. So in that survey, several questions were asked, like, did you become a witness of different destructions, death? Did you lose any relatives? So some of the children, in particular from the eastern regions of Ukraine, were witnesses to such incidents. And you may have a look at the survey, but now I think we have a lot more of such cases and incidents because we can see what is happening and what attacks are experienced by the whole country and by specific cities. So we need to get even more experts who would be knowledgeable and who would really understand what methods are applicable. I think that tomorrow we will have a chance to discuss this in detail. We will discuss what methods could be used from the point of view of psychology, social science, or law, because there may be an overlapping area, but in some cases we need to understand how we should approach a specific area to really find the best tailored solution that would be in the best interest of the child. Thank you. Let me go on. I'm Tatiana Semyakov, the head of the Vera Nadia Lyubov, or Face Hope and Love initiative, and the coordinator of the Women, Peace, Security 1325 coalition from Kharkiv. I've been listening attentively to our today's speakers, and I really felt how powerful a project is being implemented in Ukraine. I'm really grateful to the European Union for supporting this project. And, you know, the key thing here is that the project is being implemented using a multi-tiered approach. We've got multidisciplinary teams with a psychologist, a lawyer going to the field, and this is really something that matters. And Johan has already mentioned today that we are aiming to satisfy the basic needs, to inform people and to provide humanitarian aid to them, or to promote humanitarian aid provision. This is the first layer. Then the second layer or tier is the national one, with the creation of the database and collection of evidence. This is extremely important. It is true that not all crimes can really be now submitted to the court. And Johan has mentioned a number of reasons for that. And there is also an international level which deals with informing the people throughout the world about what is happening in Ukraine. And you know, the crimes being dealt with within this project and not within this project by the Kharkiv Human Rights Group is a whole set of crimes. To deal with them, we need experts, professionals. And I think, Johan, that we should be asking for further support. We should be addressing the EU and maybe also other partners who could help us to train the human rights organizations in Ukraine in what you are already competent in. I think that this is something extremely relevant for Ukraine now. Also, we should mention the ADC Memorial. They are dealing with children, and it's so much difficult to work with children because there are a number of threats you're dealing with in terms of re-traumatization of children. Also, there is a risk that the child will not really assess something happening to him or her in the wrong way. Otherwise, it may stay as a bad memory with the child forever. So what we're going to do today and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow is development of the methodology that could be used by NGOs, by the state authorities in their communication with children, and also law enforcement agencies, definitely. This is also important because law enforcement agencies record the information about the crime, and it is them who should build the right dialogue with the child in the right format. In Ukraine, we do have some entities working rather competently and well, but this is more like a fragmented work. Documentation of CRSV crimes, both in relation to adults and in relation to children. Yes, we have the rescue assistance centers. I know that they work well. They work in Odessa, and I was happy to learn that you also are available in Lviv. And in those centers for the people who have been rescued, people had to work with real experts who were well trained. So we try to inform people about the fact that they need to ask for help. They need to speak out about their experience. I guess that tomorrow we are going to identify the main partners in our work with children that we will need to contact. And I would just like to wish good luck to your project. Let's have a follow-up. Let's have a good continuation, but focus on training. There should be a lot of training. You should do trainings for social organizations, for NGOs, for human rights organizations, for psychologists. Everybody is in need of trainings. And just let me wish you good luck in your work. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your words. I'm Olena Knyazeva. So I'm Olena Knyazeva. I represent the Sociological Information and Research Center of Odessa. I'm a social scientist, and I'm really grateful to the ADC Memorial for the invitation to such an important event. And as a social scientist, I would like to fully support everything Tatiana has mentioned, because for quite many years we have been dealing with research where children are in the focus of attention. And Tatiana has mentioned that in the year 2024, we adopted the Code of Ethics regarding conducting surveys with children. And more than, actually it was in 2004, and more than 20 years have elapsed, but experts know how many issues we had been faced with. Sorry, these are some extra sounds from Zoom, most probably. Somebody unmuted by accident. So, how many issues are still there whenever we are conducting surveys with children and regarding children. And let me draw your attention to the fact that the event in which we participate and the workshop that will take place tomorrow actually you do unite the people who have something to do with the issue we're considering. And This is an interdisciplinary workshop, and this is important because researchers and experts and NGOs, CSOs are involved. They participate and lawyers participate in this workshop. So this means that we are going to apply an intersectoral approach to studying this problem. And unfortunately, I remember in 2022, me and Tatiana also went to Poland to an event. And that was already the beginning. We were just considering how to deal with this issue, and our colleagues organized an event where they tried to familiarize with the experience available abroad. These were French colleagues, the US colleagues, and they shared the experience on the study of conflict-related sexual violence. So 4 years, more than 4 years have elapsed, but we are still at the beginning of this pathway because of the importance of this problem. You already heard it today that this is a very complex issue, and I would like to support my colleague's words. She said that for psychologists, for social scientists, whenever we are doing research with and surveys with children, the first principle is do no harm. This is a really sensitive topic. That's why we should be going in small steps. But I do hope that we are on the right track with those small steps. And the task that we now have is to develop the methodological manual or guideline, or let's call it a methodology that would aim to help us. This must be the methodology for a unified approach. It should be tested, and only after that it should be scaled up. And in the future, based on this manual, we will be able to engage experts from other regions and from other areas in order to have an in-depth analysis of the issue and in order to learn how to document such incidents that unfortunately children experience in wartime. Thank you. Thank you for your statements. We still have some time for questions and answers. So suppose there are questions in the audience. Yes, good afternoon. I'm Enrari and I work as a lawyer. In Truth Hounds, we document war crimes and we also work with the state authorities, with the General Prosecutor's Office. And I've got a question. Well, unfortunately, I cannot be present at the training that will take place tomorrow, but I've got a question. How do we protect the interests of children, the best interests of children, if there is no access to children? I'm speaking about the situations where we have war crimes like abduction or forced displacement, and we cannot even ask relatives because it may be the case that there are no relatives, or there may be a case that the caregiver doesn't have a good relationship with the child because he was like assigned to the child after abduction. So how can we protect the best interests of children if there is no access to children and there is not actually good access to relatives?
Only Committee on the Rights of Children has opportunity for collective complaints of children, but still for these collective complaints you need obviously sometimes we cannot do legal procedures. We can just do advocacy. We can collect some issues like this child who became a hostage in the military action.
we cannot interview this child. We cannot interview people related to this case. We know about this case from military. On the other side, Ukrainian military witnessed, and we have to work with this case, whatever we can do. Sometimes we have to look for alternative ways of advocating with quite changed reality, not mentioning place, name, data, all the basic things that real investigation needs. But if we trust the case, if we have real reasons to believe in it, we still can speak about it as an example. And I think it's at least what we can do, give kind of voice to such a child in this way. Of course, better if we have a legal representative, which is always the state, of course, except of parents, even if there are parents. And if there's such an opportunity, better to do legal procedure, but sometimes not possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other questions? Glory to Ukraine. I'm Dana Mikhailova, the Union of Women of Lviv region and the Union of Women of Ukraine. I don't have a question, I have a reflection. So thanks for having me here. Thanks a lot for doing this important work. By profession, I'm a neuropsychologist, and I've been working for more than 15 years with people with mental disorders, children with autism, children with disabilities. And in times of full-scale invasion, I also connected to the experts from the World Association, and I know that there are some short-term mentoring courses which include diagnostics and training of specialists. And today I actually felt good when somebody mentioned that justice has no limitation of action. It's really an important statement because we understand that we have a lot of experts in neuropsychology, interdisciplinary supervision. So we need to address our European partners now because they definitely don't have this awful experience, tragic experience that we have, but they have a pathway. And it's important to really engage those experts and to be professional. We are all talking about the principle do no harm. So this principle matters a lot. And when our team works with collection of information, when we work with children and adolescents, it's important to bear it in mind that there is no safe space in Ukraine now. And integration, supervision, referral, pathway planning should be a comprehensive issue. So on behalf of our association, I would like to offer cooperation with us because we have already got a well-tested and well-approved course. Thank you. Thank you. Any other volunteers who would like to ask questions or to voice their comments regarding the things heard today? Maybe there is someone in Zoom who would like to ask a question or to voice a comment. We still have some time left. So good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you. Good. Thank you. Because, you know, whenever I'm shown on the screen and you disappear from my view and I don't understand whether you can really hear me or not. So thanks for giving the floor to me. I've got a reflection. That's why I didn't want actually to voice my statement after the first part. I wanted to have it here in the end. I'm Ola Kutsuruba, the Opora Civil Network. And I've got a comment which is similar to the one made by Ola Malin. And it's kind of a feedback or the answer to the question whether we compete with the state or whether we compete with one another. So if you go to the website of the Prosecutor General, you can see that there are 46,000 proceedings that have been registered. So definitely there is no space for competing, and it's not the right time to compete with anyone, all the more with the state. So Opora Civil Network has been documenting war crimes, and now we're also documenting war crimes abroad. From abroad, not to have any duplication with the work of the national organizations. And that's why I actually asked you a question in the registration form, and Yevhen has already given the answer regarding the universal jurisdiction, because it's really relevant when the documenting was done from abroad. Definitely for Opora, this is just an extra part of our activity. We started doing documentation because we saw that there is a great need for that, and therefore we should use our capacity to do this. We've got the database of 3,000 cases in Poland, and together with partners from Interjust and World Action Worldwide, we are working towards building the case within universal jurisdiction, but we also provide consultations regarding the register of damages that has been mentioned today as the mechanism, which is of high importance. So I've just got a call for you, encouraging you to further work, because there is a lot of work for many years, for many decades. Therefore, any possible help coming from the civil sector would be important. This is something that is really so much required. Also, we work in Lviv region. There is a project related to provision of consultations on the register of damages, and we cooperate with the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union, or we ourselves go to the detention places. Well, these are not actually detention centers, but these are the hotels that are collective sites where our IDPs live. So we try to work with the registration of applications for the register of damages, and I'm really grateful to Yevhen for what he's doing. I'm also grateful to Ruslan Topolevskyi. He has already left, as I can see, but I would like to express my gratitude to him as well. Thank you. Thank you. Any other person, either online or offline, who would like to ask a question? You're very much welcome. I'm Evgenia Lutsenko, and I represent ADC Memorial Brussels. I would just like to express my gratitude to everyone. I would like to express my gratitude to the EU for giving us an opportunity to work in this area. Thanks a lot, Yevhen Zakharov, for hosting this event. And I would also like to express my gratitude to Stefania Kolaeva and Olga Abramenko, because they are a small organization, but they are doing a lot for Ukraine. And this is something I'm telling not as a member of this organization, but just as a Ukrainian. Thanks a lot for your work. Thank you, Evgenia. Well, I think that if there are no more people willing to give their comments or to ask questions either in Zoom or here in the room, I think that we will wrap up. And let me also express my gratitude to everyone for your active participation, for your interest in this range of topics, and for your willingness to work and to cooperate. And first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the European Union, because it's thanks to it that we have been implementing already the second project. Thanks a lot for supporting us. This has become possible thanks to you, and we will go on with this work. Tomorrow we will have the workshop that is also organized by this project, and our meeting was organized by this project. So let me express my gratitude to you for your support, for your ongoing support. I think that with this, I will do the wrap up, and that will be the end of our official part. But side by side with those premises, we also have some space for networking. So everybody is heartily invited.